Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robin Sears, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Ben Roberts-Smith, recipient of the Victoria Cross and Medal for Gallantry. We acknowledge the Australian War Memorial Council members and the families of Corporal Scott Smith and Corporal Cameron Baird, MG, who are joining us for a special Last Post ceremony commemorating the 20th anniversary of the interment of the unknown Australian soldier in the Hall of Memory. Today is also the 95th anniversary of the armistice on the 11th of November 1918, which ended the First World War. On this Remembrance Day, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We also acknowledge the members of RSL and services clubs who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. This evening we will be joined by visitors and students who will be laying wreaths and floral tributes at the base of the reflection pool during the ceremony. Shortly, Australia's Federation Guard will dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier within the Hall of Memory. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. It provides a ceremonial presence during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries and for civil and military events, including here at the Australian War Memorial. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families, friends, and Australians could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. The Roll of Honour lists the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations over more than a century. Normally at this ceremony we tell the story behind just one of those names. Tonight, Corporal Ben Robert Smith will read the eulogy for the unknown Australian soldier, delivered on this day in 1993 on the occasion of his interment into the Australian War Memorial's Hall of Memory. Plans to honour an unknown Australian soldier were first put forward in the 1920s, but it was not until 1993 that he was at last brought home. To mark the 75th anniversary of the end of the First World War, the body of an unknown Australian soldier was recovered from Adelaide Cemetery near Villers-Bretonneux in France and transported to Australia. After lying in state in King's Hall in Old Parliament House, the unknown Australian soldier was interred in the Hall of Memory at the memorial on the 11th of November, 1993. He was buried with a bayonet and a sprig of wattle in a Tasmanian blackwood coffin, and soil from the Pozieres battlefield was scattered on his tomb. The unknown Australian soldier represents all the men and women whose names are listed on the Roll of Honour. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
We do not know this Australian's name and where, and we never will. We do not know his rank or his battalion. We do not know where he was born, nor precisely how and when he died. We do not know where in Australia he made his home, or when he left it for the battlefields of Europe. We do not know his age or his circumstances, whether he was from the city or the bush, what occupation he had left to become a soldier, what religion, if he had a religion, if he was married or single. We do not know who loved him or whom he loved. If he had children, we do not know who they are. His family is lost to us as he was lost to them. We will never know who this Australian was. Yet he has always been amongst those whom we have honoured. We know that he was one of the 45,000 Australians who died on the Western Front, one of the 416,000 Australians who volunteered for service in the First World War, one of the 324,000 Australians who served overseas in that war, and one of the 60,000 Australians who died on foreign soil, one of the 100,000 Australians who have died in wars this century. He is all of them, and he is one of us. This Australia and the Australia he knew are like foreign countries. The tide of events since he died has been so dramatic, so vast and all-consuming, a world has been created beyond the reach of his imagination. He may have been one of those who believed that the Great War would be an adventure too grand to miss. He may have felt that he would never live down the shame of not going. But the chances are he went for no other reason than that he believed it was the duty he owed his country and his king. Because the Great War was a mad, brutal, awful struggle, distinguished more often than not by military and political incompetence. Because the waste of human life was so terrible that some said victory was scarcely discernible from defeat. And because the war, which was supposed to end all wars, in fact sowed the seeds of a second, even more terrible war. We might think this unknown soldier died in vain, but in honouring our war dead, as we always have and as we do today, we declare that this is not true. For out of the war came a lesson which transcended the horror and tragedy and the inexcusable folly. It was a lesson about ordinary people, and the lesson was that they were not ordinary. On all sides, they were the heroes of that war, not the generals and the politicians, but the soldiers and sailors and nurses, those who taught us to endure hardship, to show courage, to be bold as well as resilient, to believe in ourselves and to stick together. The unknown Australian soldier whom we are interring today was one of those who by his deeds proved that real nobility and grandeur belongs not to empires and nations, but to the people on whom they, in the last resort, always depend. That is surely at the heart of the Anzac story, the Australian legend which emerged from the war. It is a legend not of sweeping military victories so much as triumphs against the odds, of courage and ingenuity in adversity. It is a legend of free and independent spirits whose discipline derived less from military formalities and customs than from the bonds of mateship and the demands of necessity. It is a democratic tradition, the tradition in which Australians have gone to war ever since. This unknown Australian is not interred here to glorify war over peace, or to assert a soldier's character above a civilian's, or one race or one nation, or one religion above another, or men above women, or the war in which they fought and died above any other war, or one generation above any that has been or will come later. The unknown soldier honours the memory of all those men and women who laid down their lives for Australia. His tomb is a reminder of what we have lost in war and what we have gained. We have lost more than 100,000 lives, and with them, all their love of this country and all their hope and their energy. We have gained a legend, a story of bravery and sacrifice, and with it, a deeper faith in ourselves and our democracy, and a deeper understanding of what it means to be Australian. It is not too much to hope, therefore, that this unknown Australian soldier might continue to serve his country. He might enshrine a nation's love of peace and remind us that in the sacrifice of the men and women whose names are recorded here, there is faith enough for all of us. They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our last post-ceremony. The Director of the Australian War Memorial, Dr. Brendan Nelson, will now say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, today of course marks the 95th anniversary of the armistice for the First World War. It represents also, as Ben Roberts-Smith reminded us in reading the eulogy to the unknown Australian soldier, the 20th anniversary of the internment of this Australian. But it also recognises the 17th anniversary of a young Ben Roberts-Smith joining the Australian Army. I'd like, on behalf of the Australian War Memorial, to present you, Ben, with something which your wife and the mother of your twins, Emma, suggested to me 2 weeks ago. Before I do, I just remind all of you that on the 7th of August 1915, in a battle of epic, savage sacrifice, 600 Australians at the neck on the Gallipoli Peninsula charged the Turks, and of the 600 who charged, 240 were killed, 100 were wounded, and the Australian official historian Charles Bean said that it was not possible to walk the length of 2 tennis courts without standing on the body of a dead Australian soldier, as they lay 2 deep. Emma said that Ben's favourite painting is that of George Lambert, the painting of that battle, which he painted in 1919, talking to the survivors of the battle. You may recall that the young captain leading the 4th wave, seeing what had happened to those before, had turned to his men and said, "Boys, you have 10 minutes to live, and I will lead you." George Lambert spoke to those who survived in doing the painting, and so, Ben, it is our great honour, because 17 years ago not only did your life change, you also changed the way we see ourselves. The loyalty which you showed to your men and the respect they gave to you is something that is the subject of true admiration, not only for you, but for all of those with whom you have fought and given of yourself for us. So it's my privilege, and when we finish, please don't take it out on me. It was Emma's suggestion, and a wonderful one, and a personally signed copy of A Ridge Too Far, the Gallipoli book by Ashley Eakins. There are only 100 copies of this, and you have number 98, and it's our honour to give it to you.
Thanks very much, Brendan, for organising it. It's amazingly thoughtful.
There's nothing we can ever do to thank you and all the guys, but that's something anyway. Yeah.
Thanks.